Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of Scrutiny on the 11th March 2021. The time is now 6 p.m. This meeting is being held under the regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April 2020 in response to the COVID-19 situation. My name's Councillor Caroline Brooke, Chairperson of the committee. There are a few housekeeping reminders to run through as there are new working practices in response to the regulations. First of all, could I please ask everyone present in this virtual meeting that your microphones remain muted and your camera is turned off whilst you're not addressing the meeting, as this will reduce background noise and avoid any unintentional disturbances. Please, can I also advise that the open parts of the meeting are being audio recorded and the live streamed from the council's website, in addition to a video recording of the meeting, which will be uploaded to the council's YouTube channel after the meeting. Members and officers, where appropriate for each item, please use the chat function of the meeting to indicate if you wish to speak or to raise a point of order or explanation. I'll invite you to then speak at the appropriate time. Each member will be invited to speak in turn, therefore I would encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. When speaking, referring to agenda papers, please make sure that you reference the paper or paragraph, page or paragraph number, just so that we can all follow what you're referring to. Thank you. Please note during the duration of this virtual meeting, it's planned for 2 hours. Hopefully we will stick to that time this evening. Finally, if members wish to leave the meeting at any point, could they please make themselves known to me through the chat function, and I'll announce to the meeting that you are to leave the meeting. Please could I ask the Democratic Services Officer to undertake a roll call of members of Scrutiny to confirm who's present this evening. So Matthew, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'll do a roll call as the Chair says. If you could unmute your microphones and put your cameras on and just confirm your attendance, please. Thank you. Councillor Becker.
Hi everyone. Yes, good evening, I'm here.
Councillor Bronk.
Good evening, I'm present.
Councillor Brooke.
I'm present.
Councillor Krask.
Present.
Councillor Hiscock.
Good evening, yes, I'm here.
Councillor Horrell.
Good evening.
Your microphone was a little low there, Councillor Horrell.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lumby.
Good evening, Matthew.
Thank you. Councillor Power.
Thank you, I'm here, Matthew.
We've had apologies from Councillor Scott, Chair. I've noticed Councillor Gemmell's on the call. Yeah, Councillor Gemmell, you're replacing Councillor Scott. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And Councillor Weir.
Good evening, I'm present.
Chair, that's all members of the committee present. Apologies from Councillor Scott and Councillor Gemmell replacing him. Chair, just while I've got the microphone, just to advise you, we've also got Chief Inspector John Turton on the call with us this evening. Other members that I can see have joined, Chair, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Cutler, Councillor Todd, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Porter. And finally, Chair, a number of officers on the call. We've got Laura Taylor, Lisa Kirkman, Richard Botham, Davina Damon Hollands and Leslie Bridger from the Neighbourhood Services team, and Simon Howson and Dave Shaw and myself in Democratic Services. That's me done for now, Chair. Thank you.
Many thanks, Matthew. Much appreciated. Right, so on to the business items this evening. Apologies, we've already covered, so we shall skip straight through that one. Thank you, Matthew. Do we have any declarations of interest from any of the councillors? Councillor Hiscock.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to declare that I am a county councillor, and there may be items on the agenda which have some bearing on that. I'll give you the proper wording, actually, sorry. A non-pecuniary interest concerning items upon the agenda that may be related to my role as a county councillor. Is that better?
Many thanks, Councillor Hiscock. Davina, you raised your hand. Would you like to speak?
Hello, Councillor Brooke. Hi. Just sending Sandra Tuddenham's apologies. Sorry, I wanted to say earlier she's not very well, so sends her apologies to everybody tonight.
Much appreciated. Thank you, David. Any other declarations of interest at all? I can't see any other hands raised. No. I have no announcements this evening. So we'll go on to item 4, minutes of the meeting from the 2nd of February 2021. The minutes of the meeting are to be signed as a correct record this evening. Is everybody agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you, everybody. Matthew, I understand there's no public participation this evening. Is that still correct?
That's correct, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So in that case, we have the Community Safety Partnership Performance Review piece. And Councillor Porter, I understand you're introducing this, and I'd like to welcome John Turton to this meeting in advance of that. Thank you, Councillor Porter.
Thank you, and I'm really sorry that Sandra is not able to be here tonight, and pleased that Davina has joined us. The role of this committee is as a critical friend to the Community Safety Partnership, and I'm really delighted that the District Commander, Chief Inspector John Turton is here to answer your questions too. But it is definitely a partnership, and I just wanted to make a specific thank you to the whole Sandra and her whole team, our partners on the Community Safety Partnership as well. They've actually been a team out on the front line through the pandemic, and I know that that's been an absolutely key service for Winchester City Council. And the Community Safety Partnership has got 3 shared specific priorities at the moment: domestic abuse, drug-related harm and quality of life. And throughout the pandemic, the team has continued their business as usual, as I've said, but the usual business has actually changed in character. So part of our conversations tonight, I hope we'll look at that change in character and what we've learned as positives and negatives out of that. So the neighbourhood services and the community safety team in Winchester City Council operate at the level, I would say, below, but actually it's in conjunction with the police and working definitely in partnership on them. And I'd just like to touch on a few matters that we're expanded on in the appendices, and which I'm sure that Chief Inspector Turton would be very happy to talk to you about, or myself. One's the Public Space Protection Order, which was renewed in October 2020. It's valid for 3 years, and it actually comes out for us as an alcohol control zone in Winchester, which means that park drinking has all but been eliminated. The second one is Stop Domestic Abuse. Self-referrals can be made by 0808 2000 24/7, but the number of self-referrals reduced in 2020 because because people didn't feel safe enough to make those referrals from home. The partnership to tackle domestic abuse has increased online information. A lot more has gone out online and on Facebook, etc. White Ribbon Day was on the 25th of November. Normally we'd be out in the streets, but this in 2020 we encouraged employers to join the EIDA system, which is Employers Initiative on Domestic Abuse, specifically because they can recognise domestic abuse of their employees even when they're interacting online. And we really wanted, some employers did some very impressive things, including Boots and other stores. I just don't want to get this to go past without mentioning Anne Craig. She was a city councillor. She was an absolute advocate for Stop Domestic Abuse, and unfortunately she died earlier this year. Sandra was very honoured to go to her funeral, and I think she would be sorely missed by that whole team and the whole partnership that was doing domestic abuse. Just wanted to raise very quickly again, fly tipping cases increased from 1236 in 2019 to 1531 in 2020. The whole country had an increase in fly tipping. So Sandra arranged for the whole team to be trained to investigate occurrences to increase our speed of response. Our response could not be as high as it was unless we'd had the whole team trained up. And as a result, we found a number of cases with enough evidence to be investigated, from 19 in 2019 to 58 cases, and they're going through the process as we speak. In contrast, noisy behaviour was reported down from 15 to 6 cases. I think that's because the students went home. Antisocial behaviour repeated the same pattern that we've had year on year, and it always peaks in the summer, sort of July, August time. The Fire and Rescue Service continued to make safe and well visits, well over 350, which are vital for safeguarding. And I know that they did do some very useful work, very valuable work on one of our, what we describe as our difficult sites. I'll leave the police to talk through other matters, but I hope we can also just touch on the success of Hotel Watch during the scrutiny as well, if there's time. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. If I could pass over to Chief Inspector John Turton. Do you have a presentation for us, or would you just like to talk through some things with us?
You've got a presentation?
Oh, you're still muted.
How's that?
Much better, we can hear
Thank
you.
you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you all tonight. I think that Matthew's actually captured some of my input on some slides, so I'll just wait until that catches up. But what I wanted to start off by saying was just that it's a really difficult year to reflect on performance. It's been very, very different, but actually we've really delivered on the front line. We've been focused on our priorities and very much kind of delivered. You'll see in a minute with the slides that I've put up that we've achieved in comparison with year to date in the same sort of period, almost a 30% reduction in overall crime, which it would be easy to give all the credit to COVID, but actually we've been doing some really hard work in relation to some of our most persistent offenders. We've been really offender focused, and we've done lots of work to support our most vulnerable people out there. One of the tactics that we've been using to tackle some of the county lines problems that you'll all be aware of is actually trying to put something in place that's a little bit more long lasting, that's more sustainable. And what we've been doing is been working with our colleagues in the Metropolitan Police under Operation Monument. And we've been actually investigating the core offences, and you'll see that we've actually charged some conspiracy offences, and that's allowed us to take control of the lines that they've been using on the telephones to actually use their business. So not only have we got offences detected, not only have we been able to tackle those offenders and bring them to justice, we've actually been able to stop the phone lines being taken over by other criminal activities. And the really interesting thing and real innovative thing we've been doing is actually using the lines that have been using to deal drugs to get out that preventative information to offer support services to some of the users and some of the people that have got those addictions. So I think that's a really good initiative, a good project, and it's something that we're going to, as a force, be doing more of as we move into the next kind of performance year. So the other thing that Councillor Porter mentioned as well that I was going to tell you about was Hotel Watch. It's a really simple, basic initiative. It's about educating some of the people that work on the front desks and very much in the customer contact areas of hotels, to let them know and recognise what those signs of vulnerability look like. Very basic, a really good product, and we've already had a really good success out of that because we were called to a hotel in Winchester where there were two young lads that had been missing from the Croydon area for a number of months. They were found in the hotel. They were found with lots of drugs. We managed to deal with them for the offences, but actually recognise their vulnerability in amongst that. And they were handed over to the St Giles's Trust. So really good success story, and great example of partnership working. And what I would say as well is that, you know, it's not just about police. I think more than ever, our partnership has been so strong throughout this, through all sorts of different activities. There's been some really good examples of where we've had to act quickly and agilely to respond to circumstances. I'm really proud of the partnership drugs panel that we use to share that sort of information to protect and safeguard people, but also to focus our resources in tackling some of that difficult crime. That partnership meeting, as previously met every month, once a month. But actually, when we went into the period when we were invoking the emergency housing, we actually increased the frequency of that to every 2 weeks. So the panel has actually, not only has it carried on, but we've increased the frequency of that. So really good point. We've been really mindful of some of the hidden crimes that perhaps are not reported, and Councillor Porter's already mentioned that we're mindful that domestic abuse has crept up a little bit, and that actually some of our outcomes are not as great as we would want them to be, and that's going to be our focus in the year as we move forward. And actually what it has done, the lockdown, is we've seen that it's brought about a return to some of the old kind of antisocial behaviour problems that we've not seen for a while. So open air drinking in the cathedral grounds, open air drinking and antisocial behaviour and disorder in some of the open spaces, and a problem in the Compton, Shawford Locks area were problems that we've seen in the past, but not to that sort of magnitude. And then just finally to mention on the where we've been on COVID. As a district, I'm really pleased that we've got quite a compliant district. In comparison with some of the areas, the demand has not been as great, but I'm really pleased to say that our engagement activity has been really good, in fact more than in other districts, and that where we've had to, we've actually used the legislation to enforce that when it's been absolutely needed. So I think the slides just moved off, but if you look at the control chart that demonstrates where all crime is, and this is the last kind of 3 years, so anyone that's kind of sitting there and thinking that we're in a good place just because of COVID, you'll see that we've been on a really good place since kind of July 2019. So we've maintained that sort of line of trajectory, and in a good place. I don't know if we've got the next slides, please. So yeah, as I said, that this formal action really means the amount of crime that we're solving, and actually I would say that I'd rather be telling you that we're preventing crime rather than solving it, and we're in a good place for that. But actually what we want to see is this going the other way as well. So some of the crimes that would have been solvable have been screened out because we've just not had the capacity to deal with them in the pandemic. So there will have been some opportunities to improve our outcome rate that unfortunately we've not been able to take. Hopefully as we move out of the pandemic and explore some opportunities, we'll be able to improve on that. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, so you see there that antisocial behaviour, quite an up and down sort of chart here, but you will see that as we kind of moved into the pandemic, that we had some real challenges over the summer months in tackling some of those issues that I've mentioned already, and that we kind of started to get to grips with them towards the end of the summer. It'll be no surprise either that during the winter months we've driven that down, and actually the problems aren't follow that natural kind of trend anyway through the winter. But we're really keen to learn those lessons from the pandemic as we moved out on the kind of road to recovery, and see if we can do more to work in partnership to tackle some of those antisocial behaviour hotspots. But as you'll see at the moment, we're in a place where we've now actually moved lower than that, and at the moment we're in a place that's as low as we've been for the last kind of 3 years. So I'm pleased about that too. So next slide, please. So a bit of a messy one, this actually, and since this was produced, it's actually improved even more. But I'd kind of draw your attention to the amount of crime that we've reduced. So bottom right is the percentages, and start off bottom of the table, you'll see that it's 27.8%. I can just about read that with my eyes. It's now kind of since we've did these tables, we're the same sort of stage as well, so we've kind of maintained that, but the actual variance of crime that we've reduced has increased further from the chart that you'll see on bottom left. And now we're over 2,200 crimes better off than we were this time last year. So again, yes, COVID will have had a assist in that, but it's not lost on me the amount of partnership work that we've done in terms of prevention, in terms of safeguarding, in terms of tackling those repeat persistent offenders. That's all gone towards this, and they've not just been those easy wins in terms of volume crime. You'll see as well that there's been some really good successes in some of those high harm areas as well. So quite an impressive performance period across the board and in line with previous years. So I think that's the end of the slides. So I'm really happy to take any questions on any of that I've just gone through, or anything that any of the other members would like to raise.
Thank you so much for that. Before I get to the questions that we have, I'd like to ask one, if I may. There's been a huge focus on social media on theft of dogs, and I know that there's been various tweets that have gone out trying to say that actually locally we've not seen the massive increase that's being put on social media, and I wondered if you could just respond to that, your thoughts on that, and is it worse in other areas of the country and we're just lucky, or some such?
Yeah, I think we've had my tasking and coordinating meeting at force level today, and we spoke about this, and actually it's not something that we're seeing huge problems with in Hampshire. It's a crime as well that is something that's close to everyone's heart when it does happen, but they're really rare in Hampshire. But what has happened is social media has kind of gone into a bit of a spin and really kind of generated a lot of concern and a lot of interest. And actually, I think there was a interview and a piece on local news where the inspector from our Country Watch scheme unit actually did a piece of camera and explained that very detail.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for your presentation. Councillor Lumby, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that excellent presentation and for a frankly wonderful set of figures. Because I'm a doomster, can I ask you about the one that seemed to have dramatically gone up, which was the weapons offences? And also, whilst you're answering, you previously given us comments about gangs, criminal gangs passing through the area, working their way across. And I wonder whether there's been any news on that front. I know we saw off some knockers recently, but whether there are any other travelling gangs that you're aware of and action on those. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Good questions, actually. First one as well with knife crime. I understand why that looks alarming. But it's one of those things, actually, that we only really discover knife crime when we're doing proactive operations. So the recovery of knives invariably comes from stop checking people. So stop checking people on the streets, stop checking vehicles and recovering weapons. So predominantly it's not going to incidents where the weapons have been used. It's actually that kind of preventative, proactive activity, which for me is a really good sign. And it shows to me all those interventions translate to more weapons being taken off the street. So I hope that kind of covers that bit for you. The second bit about criminal gangs is that, yes, we still see criminal gangs coming into Winchester. Predominantly, it's county lines activity in relation to the drugs business model that operates to get Class A drugs into Winchester. Recently, we've done County Lines Intensification Week in conjunction with the British Transport Police as well. It's quite a good piece on the news to cover our activity. And interestingly, although it's a national campaign, some of the forces actually nationally looked at that and thought we've got enough on our plate with this pandemic and we can't actually deliver this. I'm really pleased that as a force that Hampshire decided that very much we would go ahead, we would deliver County Lines Intensification Week. So we were able to do some really good interventions to protect some of the vulnerable people that had their properties taken over. We got some really good arrests. British Transport Police were able to make some really good interventions on the railway line network. And as I was saying, the Operation Monument is something that is long lasting as well. So frustration sometimes is with these criminal groups is that you take one of the dealers off the street, and then it's just a matter of time before someone uses another SIM with the same phone network and can use the same contacts in that list. So that's the bit about the Operation Monument where we can close that line down, use it to offer those support networks, and actually make a long-lasting thing. So the idea is really trying to cut the snake's head off instead of just causing minor sort of disruption. So hopefully that answers both those questions.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. No, that's excellent. I particularly like the snake analogy.
Councillor Power, you had a question.
Already answered, thank you, Chairman.
Wonderful. Councillor Horrell, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, John. Lovely to see you, and thank you for all that you and the team do around the district. I think we're all encouraged that we're in safe hands with you and the team there to help us. One of the things I just wanted to get your opinion on is fly tipping, which has been really difficult for many in the rural communities. It just seems to be escalating, and every time you go round a corner, not far from where I live, as soon as we've removed one lot, we've got another. Is there anything we can do? I know cameras have been put in certain places, and I know Sandra's team are very geared up to actually try and prosecute where appropriate, but it seems to be a growing issue, and people are not necessarily taking responsibility for the disposal of their rubbish, maybe sometimes being misled by contractors who say they'll get rid of it and then just simply dump it. Is there anything else going on in your world that might be reassuring for some of our residents about the whole issue around this?
Yeah, lovely to see you. I don't think I can add any more to it, actually, Caroline. There's been a lot of work done, and I can't take credit for it, actually. Sandra's team have been really good, really swift at responding to that, and I know that they've actually pursued prosecutions as well. And it's an area that there are offences, criminal offences, that we could potentially pursue, but it's very, very much led by Sandra's team, and they do a cracking job. I don't feel that there's any more kind of value that we could add to it that they don't. They do such a good job at it. But I absolutely agree that we have seen more fly tipping, particularly when some of the facilities have been closed or restricted. I do agree that it's a problem, but maybe Davina or Leslie can expand on that later, because like I say, they have led really well on that one.
Thank you. And Chair, could I ask another question whilst I have the microphone? Is that possible?
Of course.
Thank you. And John, I suppose the other question is the sort of availability of your team in some of our hotspots where we have almost, I call them no-go areas. It feels like the Wild West in a couple of places, and you'll know one in my own ward that is particularly sensitive, and just the availability of officers. And I appreciate you're stretched in 1,000 directions, but actually your support and your focus on that particular area, and indeed there are some others in our district, is really important and brings reassurance to our residents. Just wanted to get your view that it's still in the work plan, as it were. As I say, I know you're balancing things, but to reassure people, as they say, that you're there when the going gets tough, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say that I'd got a team eager and waiting and wondering what to do next. and waited for those jobs to come in. But actually, I've got a relatively small team that sometimes can be called upon to deal with other demands in force, sometimes demands on the district, and now at the moment we're having to serve that kind of national picture. So sending some resources up to Kent, and internally we're sending people to Portsmouth and to Farnborough as well to look at some of the travel implications at our ports. So yeah, we're stretched, but actually I think that one of the great things about the way that we've looked at our community safety priorities is we acknowledge that we've got those quality of life issues as well. So we're not just looking at those high harm things. We recognise that actually we do need to sort those grassroots issues out as well. And also that's that partnership bit as well, because quite often it's not a police-led thing. Quite often we're there just to deal with the symptoms of some of the other complex issues, whether they're addictions, whether it's mental health, or whether it's another problem that actually is the problem that displays those symptoms that we kind of deal with. But absolutely, we deal with priorities. We recognise that those areas that we needed the most, and it's really good that we can focus our attention on them. And the team are very alive to those issues.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Becker next. You had a question.
I do. Thank you, and thank you for these numbers in this report. Certainly, I think at this time when a lot of people are feeling particularly unsafe, this shows that we are very fortunate to be living in a relatively safe part of the country. I just had a question. You've said that self-referrals for domestic abuse are down by 50%. Is there something that we should be doing to reach out to try and get those numbers back up? Because I think we all are aware that those people who are trapped in domestic abuse situations are going to be finding it more difficult to reach out at the moment, to find places of safety and to be able to speak to someone to say, I'm at risk, please help me. Thanks.
Yeah, I suppose really good question, actually. I suppose my honest answer to that is I'm not sure. Some suggestion is that some of the families that have been in furlough kind of situations and not had that added stress of work and those push-pull factors have actually led to less stress factors in the home, which has led to fewer problems. But you know, something that we're really worried about, we're worried about domestic violence, we're worried about some of the other issues that perhaps go on in the home, so some of the child protection issues as well. We've been running an initiative called Safe at Home, which is the thought behind it is that sometimes parents are only able to leave the household, or partners are able to leave the household just to do their weekly supermarket shop. So we've actually been putting officers in supermarkets at key times and acting as a bit of a kind of like a beat surgery, like a resource of information, so that we've been able to reach out to those people and offer those opportunities when they might be on their own, away from their abusive partner, and be able to access information and access support services. And we've actually been using the technology with QR codes and things like that. So we've really been kind of pushing things as much as we can to encourage that. And we'll see what happens when lockdown starts to ease. But we've been giving it some real thought through our strategic leads in what more we could be doing. And that's just an example of something that we've been trying.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Porter, you raised your hand during that. Was there a particular comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to raise that on page 19 of the report, on Appendix 1, it has a specific breakdown of the way in which referral sources to stop domestic abuse were, and you can see the police is sky high in comparison to self-referral. And children's services had an increase of 100% in terms of safeguarding as a result of domestic abuse. And I think that's the point. It's definitely being found as opposed to being self-referred. And also the fire service also did the stay well visits, and 28 safeguarding cases came out of that as well. So I think all parties are very concerned about that, and that's why we really concentrate our efforts in the Stop Domestic Abuse process of trying to make sure that we got it out on Facebook, etc. And there's one going out pretty much every week at the moment to try and get out there on social media as well, in all forms.
Thanks, Jackie.
We're also
to both sexes, I would say, to both sexes, not just women.
We're also doing a lot of that within my role as social prescribing network across Hampshire. We're really hot on looking out for it as well, with all the troubled calls that we're making. So we're putting probably half the referrals into social services.
and actually tomorrow, I think it is, the public health are giving some money to No Limits to work at the 2 hospitals to look again at domestic abuse and to take the issues where when people come in cases they think may be related to that, so they have some youth workers working there at the key times. And also the great thing about online meetings now is we've had a lot more involvement from the hospital and A&E at our meetings at Winchester. I only wish we could get the same from Portsmouth and Southampton, because we're not getting it, but we are getting it from Winchester, and it does give us an indication of the pattern of domestic abuse.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hiscock, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just start by echoing Jackie's comments about Anne Craig? I worked with her before when she was a councillor, and she would be much missed, and she was a wonderful lady. And can I also congratulate the whole team for the work that's been done with the community safety team. I've been involved on a periphery and as a sort of someone reporting things for some time. I've also been involved with another hat with the awful effects of both cuckooing and county lines, and it's the devastation that causes to communities and people is just shocking, and it's something I'll never forget and I'll always be very conscious of. As someone who works in a city ward here, we've got quite a lot of drug dealing going on, and we're continually being reminded by residents that it's happening, and they are very impatient to see reactions. Now, I know how it works. I understand that what you want people to do is to report things and you will follow it up, but you won't get a blue light round the corner within 10 minutes of telling anybody, but eventually you'll get an Operation Monument, which will be a huge success, and congratulations on that. That was a big relief to us all when that happened, and some of us who know how it works were expecting it. It was lovely to see it. But how can we get over this message to people that it's very, very important that if they see things, they've got to report the details to 101, and that you want to know the details of the vehicles, you want to know the details of the individuals, and that it will happen if you have that information, and it's not a waste of time them doing it. How do we get that over properly?
I think we just need to keep doing what we're doing. You know, always when we have a good intervention and a good result, I like to try and get that on our social media platforms, just to demonstrate what we're doing out there. I've really tried to push that this year, so that I feel that we're always good at responding to problems, responding to things that are raised, but we're not always great at putting stuff out there in relation to the good stuff that we're doing. When people want to know what we're doing, we're really good at giving a good account of that. But I've really tried to be as proactive with policing, to be as proactive with the media, and using that as a bit of a friend. When we've been sort of celebrating the great results that we've had, I've been using that as an opportunity to promote Crime Stoppers, to encourage people to report online or 101. And you're absolutely right that you might not always see that result immediately, but sometimes they do, actually. You know, sometimes they do. I mean, last week, I'll give you an example in Stanmore, where we were given some information of antisocial behaviour and dealing. We checked on that. We realised that it was something that we need to tackle immediately. That day we managed to get a warrant from court. In fact, 2 warrants from court, executed 2 search warrants, arrested 2 people. 2 people were interviewed and released under investigation, and there's another one that's going to be interviewed as well. So that's just an example of where we can take some really swift action. But you're absolutely right. Anything that anyone can do in any community groups, just to give them that reassurance that we just need that information, and not to assume that we know what's going on. Probably we do, but it's to get rid of that kind of assumption that we know all the vehicles and know all the people, because it just might be that missing piece of the jigsaw that we need to get a search warrant, or to just check on someone that's safe.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Davina, you put your hands up then. Did you have something you wanted to come in with?
Yes, I was just going to add that with Councillor Hiscock, trying to encourage people to report is probably one of the hardest things we do. But certainly when we receive reports, we have devised a flyer, because we know not everybody wants to talk immediately to somebody in uniform, whether it be the council or whether it be the police. So last week, for instance, we had reports of drug dealing at Winnall, and we did some joint work with one of the PCSOs, and went door to door. So people didn't want to talk to us there, and then we gave them a flyer to try and encourage them to report to us, and to report directly to the neighbourhood policing team. And as John has just said, crime stoppers as well. So it's, if people give the slightest inkling of something going on, we will all be there as a partnership, and we certainly did that last week.
Thank you, Davina. Councillor Gemmell, you had a question next.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I am sorry that Sandra's not here. I know that she puts a lot into making sure this partnership works, and we've appreciated your joint efforts over the years, you and your previous incumbents. And I have to say, I think this is the one meeting I think that should be on every news programme rather than just on our broadcast, because this is such a vital part of the work that goes on in the background that helps to keep our lives much more peaceful. Fly tipping is a particular bugbear of mine, and in this area it's very rural, and I've heard a lot of what you've been saying, and I can only say, we've all got to keep up the pressure. We've all got to keep looking at it. We regularly put it on the Facebook pages for the villages to not to touch it. It is a crime scene, or it's a potential crime scene, and just to get it in. The with regard to social networking, it's brilliant. This COVID has actually really brought the value of it to the fore. Personally, I share the Hampshire Alert and anything else that we think that's going on that we can share on there, so the village is aware, and the village shares with me. And I know that there are people that say, "Oh, we've had someone in this van around knocking on the door and moved down. They've been in other roads." And we encourage these people to phone in and let yourselves know that we've had some peculiar people around, let us say. So I think that has worked a treat, and much more because of that. One of the things that's become quite noticeable, though, is that we're having reports of catalytic converters being removed. So if you could speak to us all about that, because I thought that was an old crime, and now it seems to be coming back to the fore again. So that's really my question: what's happening with those, and what's been going on?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, actually. It is one of those crimes. I can remember when I was a sergeant in Farnborough many years ago, that there were cat converter issues. It normally kind of coincides with the price of scrap metal, actually, because there's I can't remember what the component part is in the cat converter, but there's a really precious metal in there that they and that's why they steal the cat converter. But you are right, we've seen a return to cat converter thefts across the force area. Winchester's been affected, but not as significantly as some of the others. For some reason, I think the New Forest's been adversely affected by those sort of crime types, and it's a national thing, and it's another kind of organised crime. It's not a, you know, this won't be an opportunist crime. This will be something that's linked into something that's very organised. But it's been looking at a force level. And again, we spoke at our force tasking meeting today about the ownership and about how we tackle it moving forward, in conjunction with scrap metal dealers and you know, subject profiling and stuff. So in Winchester, frustratingly, the crimes that we've had have been well, the good thing is they're infrequent. Actually, that I'll start by saying they're infrequent. But the frustrating thing for me is that they're all over. So having a crime type that's infrequent and all over means that it's really difficult to tackle. So some of the places that we've had reoccurring offences have been the park and rides, where the villains will know that a vehicle is going to be parked and it's going to be left for a long period of time before the owner comes back. But then we've had them on driveways, we've had them in beauty spot areas, and they've been all over the district. So not just in the city, but in rural areas, and like I say, park and rides are really, really difficult for us to tackle. It's a sort of crime that sometimes we need to have a little bit of luck on our side and get that person to come forward to say it's happening now, and for a police officer to be close to that offence and to actually make that intervention. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's going on at the moment, but it is going to be managed at a force level, and we'll see where that goes. But like I say, numbers in Winchester are really manageable at the moment.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Porter, can you please turn off your camera? Thank you for that answer. Councillor Power, I understand you have a question that hasn't been answered this time.
I have. I'm sorry about that, Chairman.
That's all right.
John, I've got local residents trained to try and report suspicious data. I think we can discount doing it via the phone line 101 because it just takes too long. But could we please do something to make the online reporting of suspicious information easier? Because I'm fairly IT literate. It took me 20 minutes. Can we improve that process, please?
I'm so glad you raised it, actually, because I'll not comment on 101. But actually, I thought that the online system was pretty good, because I share your kind of lack of ability with some of the technical stuff, because I'm not great either. But I've done some stuff online and it looks to be quite straightforward, and I'm surprised that it's taken 20 minutes to go through. But is there any particular reason for that? Because I can feed that back to contract management.
What I'll do, John, is next time I do it, I will email you with the problems that I have in getting it through.
Yeah, if you can do that, I can send that to contact management gladly.
Let's improve it. Let's make it easier. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bronk, you had a question next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief Inspector Turton, for your time this evening and the feedback. I'm Tony Bronk and I'm the Ward Councillor for Colden Common and Twyford. So I wanted to take the opportunity in particular to thank you for the 2 dispersal orders that were issued to assist with the policing at Compton Lock, which has been of incredible concern to residents of Twyford. So much so that despite the efforts of the police to assist, and we are grateful for those dispersal orders and the occasional visits from the PCSO, the parish nonetheless felt obliged to hire rangers to come out and visit the locks on certain Thursday, Friday and Saturday evenings when it was particularly crowded, lots of alcohol, lots of noise, barbecues contrary to the requests by the parish council, etc. So we feel it's sometimes in the rural communities that the focus is sometimes more on the city than on some of our hotspots out in the countryside, and I'll save questions about where the 8 hotspots are for the Winchester officer shortly. But my sort of question for you is to ask about other sort of policing initiatives which have had to fall by the wayside, possibly because of COVID. But there were opportunities in the past for locals to raise their concerns about local policing issues through the police and community crime meetings, PACT meetings, which weren't able to take place at all last year. And I know the Golden Common Parish Clerk has been asking whether something can be established quite soon in 2021, because we've been suffering a considerable spate of burglaries or thefts from outbuildings in Golden Common, Twyford, Compton, Fair Oak. Everybody's buying alarms and all sorts for their outbuildings. And so, I mean, that's quite a contrast to your reassuring words about the massive fall in crime. So it's trying to find out how we can be assisted better. There were reports that were responded to just of late, where I know the neighbourhood watch teams always encourage people to report every single one of the break-ins, but they've been getting acknowledgement saying noted, but we're not going to be investigating because there isn't the likelihood of sort of a successful finding of forensic material, perhaps by visiting that particular site, which tended to, when it went out on Facebook, cause people to say, well, why are you bothering to ask us to report? And then finally, I mentioned Twyford having to fund its own informal policing through rangers with some special powers, but Twyford have also bought 2 of these speed reporting devices in order to try to encourage motorists to adhere to the speed limits. And we do fortunately get the occasional visit on one road, but the 85th percentile shows high speeds on the main road through the village, and yet we seem powerless to ask for any enforcement. And people are having to try and cross the main road at some sort of fairly dangerous points. Fortunately, the traffic volumes are low, but of course that encourages or makes it easier for people to speed. So there are a number of issues, I think, that we feel very strongly about in the rural communities, which haven't found their way either into your report by way of mentioning the absence of the PACT meetings or inability to address speeding concerns. And so I just wanted to thank you for what you have done for us. And Owen Reeves is very well liked in the area, and he's been very promptly responsive to questions that I've had to ask him this year about a dog attack on a postman, which resulted in suspension of postal deliveries for a fortnight for residents of an entire road. So some great work, but there are some significant gaps, and hopefully you'll be able to just give me some reassurance that we're not forgotten here, and that there will be the resurrection of some of these important initiatives for us. Thank you, Chair. Quite a lot there, but it was they knew that I was speaking tonight, and I've had quite a few contacts asking me to raise things.
No, really good. Thanks for that. It feels like a bit of a memory test, actually, this one. I don't know really where to start, but please tell me if I'm missing anything. So let's start with the dwelling burglaries that you mentioned in Twyford and Golden Common. We have had a series of offences in that area, and we've noticed them for a while, actually. And with that sort of offence type, quite often, there's very little evidential opportunities, and so this is sometimes where we get a rub between our contact management and our neighbourhood policing team, because our contact management team will want to try and turn the tap on just to just to manage offences that have got a low of opportunity of resolution, and just to try and make that space for us, so we've got maximum time to focus on other kind of priorities. And sometimes you hear they're called high harm offences and things, but of course at a neighbourhood level we'll be more alive to the fact that that fits in with a series, and we are actually interested in that. So what happens when the crime's reported and might be filed? They might get an email back from contact management to say thanks for letting us know, but we're not going to be looking into it. Every single morning on district I chair a meeting and I look at everything that's happened on district. So I look at antisocial behaviour, I look at high harm crime, I look at volume crime, I look at serious acquisitive crime, and there's my opportunity to recover some of these crime types, and for me to recognise that it actually fits in as part of the series, and we need to do more. So the crime type that you're talking about, the recent problems that we've been having with the outbuildings that have been broken into, the sheds and the garages, and also the thefts from motor vehicles that have happened in those areas when they've not been secure. My analyst has been mapping those and laying them onto a map. And I'm also aware that there have been some similar offence types in Eastleigh district, just over the border. So in Hedge End and Botley, and in other areas that have been right on that kind of, in Fair Oak was another one, right on the border. It probably be some reassurance to know that we've just made an arrest, or Eastleigh district have just made an arrest of a persistent offender that we think is linked in with our series. So there's a meeting actually on Monday that I'm going to come in, on my leave to make sure that that's on the right lines. But we've got an opportunity where we've got an offender that's been arrested, that is a persistent offender that's on remand at the moment. So we're really busy putting all those crime types together so that we can use the opportunity while that person's in prison to put some of those offences together. So some of it's really grainy evidence, some of it's ring doorbells, some of it will be circumstantial, some of it's cards that have been used in that have been stolen in offences. But I hope that offers you a bit of reassurance about the series that's going on at the moment. In relation to packed meetings, very, very much want to be connected to the community, and it has been difficult, not been possible to do in the same way. What we're trying to do is to do some more kind of virtual things, a little bit like what we're doing tonight, to get the technology and get this kind of equipment working for us, so that we can use the packed meetings and hopefully actually make them more invigorated, because invariably people that have been to packed meetings, they generally are not very well attended. Sometimes just the same members of the community that don't always reflect all the issues that are in the community. So hopefully we're going to be expanding that on a social network platform, which will make it better. I'm trying to think what else. What was the other question in there? I'm sure I've missed something.
Yes, sorry, it was quite a list. I was asking about the data from our speed limit reporting device, where we can demonstrate a high level of speeding offences, and sometimes at particular times of day you can see them always recurring. Would we be able to forward that data to a particular individual to see if we can have a spot check, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that's led by our Safer Roads partnership. So if you've got good connections with Owen, the best way is for you to give that information to Owen. He will send it to the lead of our Safer Roads partnership, and then they can look at, especially if you've got vehicles that are speeding excessively and there's a day of the week and a time of day, it's perfect. They'll probably go out there, they'll do a site survey and they'll see if they can do some intervention work there.
Thank you very much, greatly appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Councillor Krask, you had a question next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief Inspector. Fantastic presentation, and as always, that people have mentioned, very reassuring to understand what's going on in the district and where we live and the safety and such like. You know, I'm certainly pleased to see the talk and discussion around domestic abuse and drug offences. That's certainly key for me for sure. But perhaps something that's not been spoken about so much is on page 19 and 20. If we look at offender breakdown by offence category, drug offences seems pretty low in terms of 7% of total offenders of 138. But violence against the person does seem to be high. Well, it's certainly higher of all offences. So just wonder maybe if you could talk about the 138 offenders. What does that mean in terms of the context of offence, and how does that relate to the 7% being drug offences versus 41% being violence against a person? And what is violence against a person, and what's the context for it? Is there a relationship to domestic abuse? Is it related to drug offences? Is there anything that is a cause of that violence, perhaps? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So violence against a person is into two categories. So there's violence with injury and there's violence without injury. And the violence with injury is something that something that starts off as an actual bodily harm. So there's lasting pain, and then it would move up to kind of grievous bodily harm. So there's quite a wide sort of offence type within violence with injury, and violence without injury is quite wide as well, actually, because it would cover a common assault, which would be a push or a battery, but it also covers crime types where there's a fear of immediate violence. So it might not actually be an assault, but it'd be a category that it would fall into the category. Some of the other offence types that also fall into that are your stalking, harassment, malicious communications online. So there's a huge, there's a massive amount of stuff that's in there, and sometimes it's difficult to understand. So if we find that the figures are starting to skew, we have to do a deeper dive into those offence types to actually look at what it is, and is it offence that's linked to drugs-related harm? Is it linked to domestic violence? And one of the issues that I've probably not mentioned tonight, one of the real challenges and something that I'm really keen to try and work on, is actually improving the solve rate for those domestic violence cases, because one of the problems, without doubt, is that we have victims that will report that they've been a victim of domestic violence, but they don't always want to support a prosecution. So they want to tell us about it. Sometimes we'll arrest the perpetrator and get them into custody. And when we go to try to collect that evidence to try to, build a prosecution case, that's not what the victim wants. So it's more about, I think that we could probably be doing more work with domestic violence charities to see what it is that we can do to encourage victims to want to support prosecutions, whilst also accepting that it might not be the right thing to do either. So I think actually we need to accept that when they report it to us, sometimes it's just that break in that sequence that they want, and that what we see as a positive outcome, i.e. a court case or a prosecution, might not be the positive outcome that victim wants. It might just be that break in that offending. It might just be kind of like that fire break, just so that they can get out of the house and move out of the house with relatives. So, but I want to understand that a little bit more. But in relation to the drugs figures as well, we do break down our drugs-related harm crimes separately as well. So we do look at that and understand it differently.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh, thank you very much. Were there any more questions from anybody? Councillor Porter, you've got your hand up. Is that an old hand or a new hand?
In you, hand chairman. I just want to say on that matter, conversation about supporting people to take the process further is actually a very important part of the conversation that's been going on at the Domestic Abuse Forum. So it's certainly something that Winchester is taking forward as well. I'm just going to also raise another matter, which is that Sandra has reported, and Davina might like to comment about this, a very large increase in the number of people who have expressed suicidal tendencies. And that may be a part of coercion or domestic abuse or many other situations in the last few months, but that has been something that the whole team have been really aware of. So as well as people doing harm to other people, there's also a very serious risk to harm of people that our own team, our own neighbourhood services teams and the police are meeting every single day. And I know that's true of other services as well. So just as serious as people harming others is actually the issue of people choosing to harm themselves. It's very disturbing indeed. I'm sure you know that from the social prescribing you're doing already.
Well, we've been struggling a bit with that in that with people who are suicidal, quite often they go through to 111 to speak to the mental health people up there, and one of the questions that they ask on 111 is, are you a danger to yourself or others? And of course, if they're suicidal, they are a danger to themselves, in which case they get in touch with the police and say, we need you to go out because they're a danger to themselves or others. And then the police get hold of the ambulance service and say, we can't go out without you because this person's suicidal and it's a medical problem. And then it turns out that they're not a danger to the ambulance crews. The ambulance end up going there on their own, which is not what anyone ever wanted. So we keep going round and various loops, and I think the police and the ambulance service get pulled in where they need not necessarily do, and I think that wastes quite a lot of time. But yes,
but going back to the point, there is definitely a focus on stopping the violence reduction unit is very important as part of the whole package of support across the county. And just wonder if John might like to talk about that.
Yeah, they have as well. And actually, something else I was going to mention was we've got a specialist team working out of our investigation centre at Basingstoke. It's the domestic abuse support team, and so all of the cases that come in, they've got a specialist unit that will look at them, and they will look at not just the investigation. They will look at right to know, right to ask. They'll also look at is it suitable for a DVPN or a DVPO, or so they'll look at stuff. But you're right. We're working now with the violence reduction teams in order to look at other opportunities to engage and to support and to prevent and to educate. So huge bits of work going on there.
Fabulous. I just have one more question. It was mentioned earlier about the 101 service, and I heard back in 2019 that service was being looked at to its efficacy and perhaps being replaced in some other way. And I just wondered if that was a vicious rumour, or is that still something that's out there in the ether as a consideration?
I'm not sure. It's not my area of specialism. That I know that we've just invested in a new contact management platform in conjunction with Thames Valley Police. A massive investment that's starting now to take hold. So I don't know whether that's the change that you were referring to, but I've not heard anything about 101 in particular.
Thank you. Before we close this section, any other questions from anybody or anything, any other comments? Davina, perhaps you'd like to make, or anything, anyone else? Davina?
I don't have anything further to add unless anyone has any questions for me.
Councillor Gemmell, Chair, would just like to ask a question.
Okay, Councillor Gemmell.
Thank you. It wasn't a question, it was debate or comment. and it was just to ask if we can give you, and you can take back to your team, and from our side to go back to Sandra and her team, a tremendous vote of thanks, especially from this part of the area. As I said before, I think this is a function of ours that works. It's a partnership that works. It brings incredible value to the rest of us, and I'm just sorry that the public don't get to see your annual interaction with us as well and hear the news as we hear it. And one other thing was, I know you said here, and I've read about your social interaction, don't forget us as councillors when you do want something pushed out, because we talk to villages, we're at parish council all the time. Now you can't get out with a packed meeting. If you want something taken to the local people, we are here and very happy to do so. But yes, from my point of view, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Porter, you raised your hand.
Just again, really to say that this team, police, our own neighbourhood services and community safety and the fire service, were all out on the streets dealing with everything through the pandemic. I just want to give a huge vote of thanks to them. They really have been amazing. And going back to Councillor Gemmell's point, yes, we'd like to tell the public more and more about what we do, but actually that's not the way this particular team works. It's there is a certain amount of social media, but actually if people want to feel safe, they want to know the job's being done, and that's what the team really concentrate on, and they've really concentrated on that, on both police and fire service and everybody else, including the domestic abuse services. They've really concentrated on that during the COVID and worked incredibly well together. And I'd say that this year feels like everybody was definitely pulling in the same direction.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. I'd like to reiterate my vote of thanks for everything that you've done, and to Sandra, also to Davina, if you can pass to Sandra and the rest of your team the great thanks we have to all of you. You definitely make us feel much safer, and every year I always look forward to this scrutiny meeting with great interest, because I always feel much more informed. And actually, I mean, particularly on things like the dog theft and some of the things that get spread on social media about how serious the crime levels are, actually I find it always really reassuring when you come along and talk to us more about it and give us the proper real information. So thank you, Chief Inspector John Turton, for coming along and joining us this evening, and thank you, Davina, for everything you and your team do as well.
Lovely, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologise for the interloper on the screen that keeps coming to join the party. Right, on to the next agenda item. So we are coming on to Q3 finance and performance report, including the verbal update from the chair of the
Excuse me, Chair, I'd asked if I could ask a question of Davina, if that would have been at all possible.
Apologies, of course you may.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I found the report extremely helpful, particularly like the way it addressed the issue of fly tipping in terms of showing the number of reports, but also the action taken, which is obviously to clear it up. And it provided us with the number of reports and the tonnage cleared and things. What wasn't so clear to me from the report is what use is made of some of the other data and reports, like the ASB hotspots, because I can see on page 15 that it refers to 8 hotspot locations, but we don't know what they are. I couldn't tell whether Compton Lock was amongst those. We couldn't see whether they were the same locations year on year, and therefore whether we just have to recognise there are places that are difficult to manage and that we have to try to, address that in one way or another. And so I'd appreciate, if we could, to have sometimes a little bit more information on that. in order to better understand the problem. And so when I looked more closely, page 23 refers to only 47 reports, online reports about ASB problems. Now, Twyford could have submitted that number within 2 days because of the number of Facebook postings. But before I write in the parish council, minutes or whatever, the fact that people need to report more on the online tool, it would be helpful to know what Winchester would do about it, because that information about the responses to those reports isn't there. And what I don't want to do is encourage people to report, have your numbers go into the thousands because people are really anxious about Compton Lock this year, and then to say, well, actually, Winchester don't do much, because the parish chair wrote to me today saying that they were in touch with Winchester last year, but we received little support, and that's why they funded marshals themselves. And so my question to you, and sorry it's taken a while to provide you with the context, because of course you're only standing in, not only standing in, but you're kindly standing in, is to know what exactly, is Winchester looking for online reports to do something meaningful with them? And can you tell me briefly what that is, other than saying or acknowledging that we have a problem that we need to fund in order to solve ourselves? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bronk. I'll try and answer those questions as clearly as I can. I mean, certainly with the report, I'm asked to give the information and the statistics to Sandra. We could put some more locations in there. I can confirm that Compton Lock actually wasn't one of the hotspot locations. There was a lack of reporting. We certainly were aware of the issues, liaised with the neighbourhood policing team. I myself came to some of the meetings with the general public, some of the public meetings that you had, and we tried to encourage people to report. We're very, very happy to receive reports via online, direct to us. Then obviously what we'll do is we'll work in partnership. We also have just started an antisocial behaviour panel, which used to be the old Oval meeting, the offender, victim and location. So what we ask for are for referrals from the neighbourhood policing team and relevant partners into that. If the location is identified as a hotspot location, repeat reports of antisocial behaviour, then we will work with our partners in best dealing with that. But as I said, I can confirm that Compton Lock wasn't actually one of the hotspot locations, because we didn't have there wasn't regular reporting. Although certainly I know that Sandra was in contact with Councillor Cook, as I was. But I'd be delighted if people want to report to us. I think when I came to one of the meetings, I gave out about 50 antisocial behaviour report it flyers, which hopefully is educating people on how to report, give them the confidence in how to report by telephone, online, Crime Stoppers, the type of things that they can report to us. We always feedback, we always ring back and feedback to people on what action is taken. I hope that helps with that. With regards to the fly tip question, I would have to ask my colleague Leslie Bridger, who's here.
Sorry to interrupt you. That's fine. I was very happy actually with the I was contrasting, so the fly tipping bit's okay. But if I can then ask very briefly, there are only 4 reports of littering by the whole of the rural community throughout Winchester, according to the the histograms. Again, I'm highly surprised, because people collect bags of rubbish again from Compton Lock, and so if there's something that Winchester would do, I'm sure people would report it. So what would your answer be to reports online of problems of gross amounts of litter being left every day?
Okay, do you mind if I pass over to my colleague Leslie Bridger, who is attending the meeting tonight, just to, she's the expert in that field,
Okay.
so I'm
Thank you.
rather messy up.
Thank you very much, Davina.
Thanks, Davina. Yeah, good evening, everyone. In regards to littering, we haven't received that many reports of littering at all anywhere within the district. It's mainly the fly tipping that gets reported a lot. Myself and the rest.
What would Winchester's response be to reports?
I think we're a bit like the police. If we get a number of complaints about littering, we will go down to that particular area, whether it's the city centre or whether it's in the rural. We will go to that area and put active patrols and hand out littering FPNs if necessary, but we would try and educate people.
Okay, so, that's wonderful news. Thank you very much for your reply.
Thank you. Councillor Power, you said that you wanted to ask a question specifically on the report.
Thank you, Chairman. I have several questions on this report. Would you like them all at once or one at a time?
Whichever you feel is best. Are they all related or are they all completely
separate? No, they're all separate, I'm afraid, Chairman. Let's start on page 13, and I'm referring to 11.4, the 3 priority categories. Now, we can see there's a good quality indicator for domestic violence and abuse. I think we can see some indicators for drug-related harm, but how do we measure our success in achieving quality of life? I like clear indicators so that we can assess progress. Thank you. My second question relates to page 14, 11.8. Under item A, it seems that we're only looking at ASB in housing areas. Now, as all councillors very well know, there is ASB throughout our wards, and it seems to be a bit pejorative to only report ones in the housing areas and therefore coming under the housing tenancy services. My second question on this page relates to fly tip enforcement. I have experienced immense problems in getting intervention from Winchester officers in the matter of fly tipping on private land. I understand that they are not able to take action. That's what I've been told in the past. But I see here that we are reporting 5 incidents on private land and all 5 were investigated. So when did that change? I have more, I'm afraid.
If I can pause you there for a moment, Councillor Power, because I think we've got 2 possibly for Councillor Porter and 1 there for Davina. So, Councillor Porter, I don't know if you want to pick those up first.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the first one was about ASB and the
quality of life.
Quality of life. You will see that we do aim to get that down per head of per capita. And you'll notice you've mentioned actually in 11.8. Well, of course, there are 4 sections of 11.8. 3 of them do actually relate to ASB. So they're just they're separated out because we deal with them in a slightly different way. But there are 3 sections there with ASB on. We do actually want to see a trend of a downward trend. We haven't got a specific target. In some cases, what we are in fact trying to press now is the community trigger tool, so that if a community has, and it's a shame that Chief Inspector Turton's gone, because we've used, he and I have worked closely on one or two of these before, that if an area does have, or an individual has a lot of ASB against them, that we can actually trigger the process to manage that ASB. Davina, you might want to comment as well on that. I've forgotten, Councillor Power, what your third question was.
My first question, Councillor Porter, was about the quality of life, and I understand from your answer that we are using the indicators in 11.8 to indicate, they're an indicator of quality of life. I can understand. I am concerned that we only, there's an implication in 11.8 that antisocial behaviour is mainly a problem within Winchester tenancies, and I don't think that's true. I think it could be better phrased.
Okay, I think it's a fact. We have dealt with, as it says in the actual lead part, we do work with other services across the City Council and externally with partners, which is why you've got the first, second, the first, the third and the fourth sections. And because our teams work together as well as on their as well as working with other areas. So somebody in private housing can make a report, just as someone in council housing or affordable housing can make a report. So it's just split out there because the last one title includes the conversation about noise visits. I'm not sure. I think it's you're implying that we should just put them all together and just give a general response.
I think that would be more polite. Maybe we should combine the two things into one statement.
I'd be happy, as this committee is a critical friend, I'd be very happy to look at that if this committee chose to ask for that to be included in the scrutiny response. I think that's an interesting point. I just want to know if Davina would like to respond to that.
Yes, hello. I was just going to add what Councillor Porter said. When reports of antisocial behaviour are made online, they come into the neighbourhood services inbox, and then they would go off to housing tenancy or stay with myself to deal with the antisocial behaviour. So I'm very happy for Councillor Porter to take that forward if you wanted the numbers to be put together, but I don't think it would reflect maybe the work that we do as well. Obviously, we do work in partnership on with our housing officers, with tenancy. But I think it shows a clear. I guess if you want to just see the numbers, then you can see the numbers there, but we do work in partnership and they do come into the council in different ways. If somebody is a Winchester City Council tenant, then they will phone the duty officer and report antisocial behaviour. If obviously we can work together with the housing officers, then we will do. We have done in issuing a community protection notice, a warning and a notice, as I have the delegated authority to do that. But I think with the scrutiny report, my understanding is it is broken down into what housing tenancy do and what community safety do, and I think that's why the figures are like this, Councillor Power. But certainly I would I don't know if maybe Councillor Porter is more is in a better position to maybe take that forward to Sandra.
It would be my view, Gina, that actually they should stay separated out because it is giving us the facts. It's not painting an untrue story, and if they do come through different options. Laura Taylor, you.
I was going to say, I think that I'll take your guide. I'll take your guide from that, but I certainly believe that the facts of the matter are there on the paper.
Yeah,
Laura.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's helpful that we identify the source of the ASB by different types across the district because it helps us with resource planning and deployment. However, we can always report it in a different manner. So just like Councillor Power, you're keen to understand the difference between private land and public land fly tips. We could report that as one number, or we can report it as two. So I understand the sentiment you're raising around identification of particular classes of our district who may be causing what is perceived to be an issue, and that we may not want to print that in a public report. So we'll take that away as a team, but we would still record it as within our systems, because then we know how to deploy resources effectively, but we can always report it differently in public.
I was just going to add what Laura Taylor said, in the fact that if antisocial behaviour is caused, if there's antisocial behaviour being caused and they are housing tenant, Winchester City housing tenant, then they are breaching their tenancy. So the antisocial behaviour trigger, so to speak, the antisocial behaviour will be dealt with in a slightly different way. And Councillor Power, I was just quickly going to just say about the community trigger. Following the publication of the white paper, we will be updating our website because it is all around the victim first. So we are already working on. Well, I am currently working on that.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing. My other point, Chairman, if I may.
Hold on, Councillor. Leslie has had a hand up for a long time.
I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chair. No, it was just to say to Councillor Power, she's a bit worried about investigating flight upon private land. I mean, we can investigate it, but we just can't have responsibility for actually clearing the rubbish. That is the landowner or the landowner's manager's responsibility to, to sort out. But other than that, we do investigate.
Thank you.
Councillor Power, are there many more questions? Because it's now 7:30. We've got another item to get to.
I'm afraid there are, Chairman. I think there's only one.
The things that need to be addressed by committee, or those that can be taken offline, I'd appreciate
I
it.
should take them offline, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very happy to receive them, Councillor Brooke. Very happy to receive them.
Absolutely. It's just whether they're required to be part of the committee, whether they're particular relevance to that, or if they are useful to be taken offline. I am happy to take them, Councillor Power, if there aren't any you feel particularly pertinent for this committee.
Chairman, thank you. I'm happy to take them offline, and if we find something that's not satisfactory, it will be brought back. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes the piece. I've not seen any more indication of questions on the report SC043. And the recommendation is that the committee note the work programme and agree any matters of significance to draw to the attention of Cabinet for built environment and wellbeing or Cabinet. I think the only key point there that I've taken away that we really do need to pick up going forwards is perhaps to look into that piece on the reporting, and also PAC meetings when we are available to look into those. Is there anything else anyone else feels I missed, or are we all happy to move on to the next item?
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So Q3 finance reporting. We are going straight to Councillor Horrell as the performance panel chair. It's scrutiny report reference SC044 and cabinet report reference CAB 3287. The recommendations are that we note the performance panel met on the 22nd of February 2021 in order to scrutinise the attached report and its associated appendices, and that the minutes of panel's meeting are included here in Appendix 6. Note that the meeting of the performance panel, no items of further work were requested to be undertaken by the performance panel, referred to the scrutiny committee, and raises with the leader or relevant cabinet member any issues arising from the information in this report, which is being presented to cabinet on the 20th of May 2021, and consider whether there are any items of significance to be drawn to the attention of cabinet. So Councillor Horrell, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And given the discussion at the last scrutiny meeting, I just wanted to confirm that all councillors were sent the performance report financial and performance monitoring report in advance of our panel meeting, and a number of councillors actually did attend that session, but there was some lack of clarity last time about receipt of the report, but that did go in advance to all councillors. As you've rightly said, we have no significant areas that we're asking are brought to scrutiny's attention. However, there are one or two elements in our discussions that we had on the 22nd of February that I would like to just note here this evening. The panel questioned the status of the housing company, and it was confirmed that the latest developments on the housing company, its formal establishment and its governance, would come to a June 21 Business and Housing Policy Committee meeting for further review by councillors. We also talked at some length regarding the priority for supporting our economy locally, and officers confirmed that they would supply a list of businesses that had been contacted and the issues being raised, which could be provided to panel members, and particularly about the distribution of the business bulletin, just to ensure that we were making the best efforts to reach right across the businesses and colleagues across the district. There was a particular item raised which has gone, I think, to Councillor Porter and the planning team, which is about the learnings from a recent telecoms application, how that's processed, who is informed, and officers were asked to make sure that that information was passed through and that progress should be made on the issue that it was felt was still outstanding about the involvement of ward councillors, notice, etc., as it particularly pertains to telecoms applications, which are treated slightly differently. So just to note that that will be picked up in another forum. We did discuss at some length various areas regarding waste. There were some questions about the average wait times for waste call lines, although we did understand at our meeting that there had been some technical issues that had hampered the calls coming into our service over a number of weeks, and callbacks in particular, and officers had very kindly worked into the evenings and weekends to try and catch up on some of that, but we were cognizant that with some of the changes in policies and activities, we needed to ensure that our service was fit for purpose, and that the wait times were reasonable. So officers agreed that they would just review that. We also were looking in the report at some of the key performance indicators, and we asked that the data showing waste collected, total recycled and total recycled should be shown in tonnages as well as percentages, just to give greater clarity of the data. So I think that was just a simple request for clarification on that information that's provided in the various reports. Councillor Todd advised us that he believed the contractual target was 15 bins per day regarding, and he would actually come back to us on that information. And there was, as I said, quite a lot of discussion around waste, and indeed Councillor Todd in another meeting a day or two ago just talked about some of those results, but clearly with the change in contract, all of us being locked down at home, and the change in the garden waste system, some information being sought about that. We very helpfully had Darren Lewis along to the meeting, really helpful to, he very kindly answered some questions from the prior meeting about flood alleviation schemes, and his report report and information he used to update us will be provided with the notes from our meeting. And I actually think that's very important for all councillors to understand. Mr. Lewis had sent us all a note as councillors recently about flood warnings and the like when the waters were quite high, and it was helpful to get his update, and that information I think should go out to all. And Councillor Porter kindly advised that she would circulate relevant data to members regarding air quality. So there were some elements that just to make sure that the data and the information was getting to all councillors so that they could have better clarity, Chair. But there were no significant areas for further investigation that we're recommending to the Scrutiny Committee. I hope that's helpful, Chair, but very happy to answer any questions.
Incredibly helpful, Councillor Horrell. I just had the one question I think I'd relayed to you before about a video of a bin being eaten by the dustbin lorry, and I just wondered if any of such was mentioned during your discussions and whether that's actually happening on a far more regular basis than BIFA are owning up to.
Chair, I'm not sure that that came up specifically, although there have been a number of issues about bin lorries damaging gate posts and things and the like. But I can certainly, I think we should just make sure that Councillor Todd and the officer team have that information so that they can obviously give appropriate feedback to residents who might be impacted and feel that perhaps they're being negatively charged or disadvantaged because of something that's happened outside of their control.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Porter, you've raised a hand.
Thank you. I'm just talking on behalf of Councillor Todd, who's not here. It's certainly something that we have noticed as well, that the bins are older now and maybe becoming more brittle, and so they're definitely getting damaged more often.
No, the comment I was making, Councillor Porter, was nothing to do with them being brittle.
It was just
a video of the whole bin being eaten by the bin.
Oh, the whole bin.
And they didn't bother to leave a note for the resident when the resident phoned in. They were due to be charged for another bin. It's only that they happened to check their ring camera and saw the whole bin being eaten alive by the bin.
Oh my goodness.
That they were aware that's happened to it. We've had a real spate of lost, missing, stolen bins in Denmead of late, and that video made me think, I wonder.
All right, okay, I certainly haven't heard that in a cabinet conversation, so we'll take that forward. And I know that Mr. Cutler's on this, Councillor Cutler's on the call too, so we'll take that one forward. I haven't seen this video, but
I will get it sent to you. It's Ian Burt has it. I sent it to Ian Burt because he got the bin replaced really quickly, so he was fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions for Councillor Horrell? No, I'm not seeing any on the chat either. Sorry, I disappeared then. In that case, I'd like to recommend that we note all of this and thank the performance panel for their time and vigilance in feeding back on this report. Is everybody agreed?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Agreed.
So we're on to, thank you, Councillor Hiscock. On to item number 8, the latest forward plan of key decisions. So that's just to note, there's only a couple of items on there. So that's noted by this committee. And other than that, that concludes our formal business for this evening. And I'd like to thank you all for your time, and thank you to the officers and to Chief Inspector John Turton for your attendance this evening. Many thanks. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Well done.
Bye.
Thank you.